whatever the law might find. And as you know, so far as I could tell, everybody in the international legal community, a large number of whom are sympathetic to the people of Gaza, on that particular question, they have defended Israel's right to self-defense, though obviously not the right to commit a genocide, but the right to self-defense. And I respectfully disagree with that view. As I wrote at the time of the Great March of Return in 2018, myself and my colleague Jamie Stern Weiner, when the question arose of whether or not the snipers along the perimeter fence with Gaza, if they were directly confronted by the demonstrators, physically confronted by the demonstrators, the claim was universally asserted that the snipers had the right to self-defense. And I said that concentration camp guards, by the very nature of their profession, which is to seal shut, to hermetically seal a concentration camp, concentration camp guards have no right to self-defense. I think the law is frankly, I recognize it as the law. I think that law is frankly insane. And I don't think any reasonable individual confronted with that situation anywhere else but in Gaza would claim that concentration camp guards retain the right to self-defense. Now, at this point, I turn to the organizers. I can go on, but you would like me to stop? No, it's... okay. Let's make the following agreement. The organizers correctly want to use the occasion of this evening to raise money for Gaza. And so there was supposed to be an interim period of approximately a half hour. Can we say if the audience makes a promise to be generous in 15 minutes rather than a half hour? Now, Israel, it was predictable that there would be a ferocious response by Israel to what happened on October 7th. That was not at all surprising. However, I believe that it's not clear the nature of the response. In part, it's perfectly obvious, and you could say understandable, that there was the desire for revenge, the sheer, unadulterated, uncomplicated bloodlust. However, that desire for revenge was compounded by the feeling of Israelis that these Untermenschen, the term that the Nazis used to describe non-Aryans, these subhumans, that the people of Gaza had not only dared lift their heads, but they had displayed a kind of ingenuity that humiliated, mortified the Israelis. The fact was that Hamas displayed a much higher level of competence than anyone would have expected, and Israel had displayed a much higher level of incompetence than anyone would have expected. And now, the impudence of these vermin, namely the people of Gaza, it had to be revenged. The fact that Israel was caught off guard created for Israel what you might call a psychostrategic dilemma, because after October 7th, a feeling suddenly surfaced in large parts of the Arab Muslim world that maybe Israel isn't invincible. Maybe there is a military option against Israel. And for Israel, that was a catastrophe. Israel uses the term its deterrence capability. And deterrence capability basically means the Arab world's fear of Israel. And now there was a sense among Israelis that its deterrence capability had been significantly compromised on October 7th, and that they had to restore it. Now, there was a time when Israel restored its deterrence capacity or capability by being very effective on the battlefield. And that was true both in 1948 and in 1967. But in recent years, Israel has become a westernized society, a secular society, or secularized society. And that means people don't want to die. They don't want to, if they have the choice, of decomposing in a ditch or dancing in a disco, they want the latter, not the former. What does that mean? In the past, Israel restored its deterrence capability. The Arab world feared it. It restored its deterrence capacity by being very effective on the battlefield. But in more recent years, it has chosen another route. And that route is not to fight on the battlefield, but to carry out these massive operations of death and destruction. Israel, and we saw this just the past couple of days, in the case of Hezbollah, Israel has ceased to be a fighting force. Israel is simply a juggernaut of death and destruction. So it sent a message to the Arab world since October 7th. And the message is very simple. In case you harbor the silly notion of having a military option against us, look at Gaza, or what's left of Gaza. So beyond the bloodlust, there was the restoration of its deterrence capability, the Arab world's fear of it, and they restored it by reducing Gaza to rubble. And that brings us to the third goal since October 7th. And the third goal was very straightforward, and it was very clearly declared. Israel was sick and tired of Gaza. Already in 2015, a senior Israeli official said, "We cannot conduct a constant war of attrition. Therefore, the next conflict has to be the last conflict." And so Israel resolved the day after October 7th that it was going to, once and for all, end the Gaza question. This was going to be the final solution to Gaza. And that final solution basically took, and I'll leave it at that, it took three forms. One was just outright extermination, which was announced in very clear terms right after October 7th. As you recall, Prime Minister Netanyahu, when he gave the order, he said, "Remember what Amalek did to you. Remember what Amalek did to you." And as the Israeli Information Center for Human Rights in the occupied territories, it goes by the name of B'Tselem. It later editorialized, it said, "When the fight against Hamas is compared to the war against Amalek, the conclusion is clear. The order is to wipe out Gaza." If there was any doubt as to what Israel's aim was, that the doubt was dispelled when the then Defense Minister Gallant gave the order, no food, fuel, water, or electricity would be admitted, allowed in this hermetically sealed parcel of land. And the fact of the matter is, by every available metric, the number of children killed, the proportion of civilians killed to combatants killed, the number of bombs dropped, the density of the bombing of Gaza, the number of homes, hospitals destroyed, the number of medics, UN workers, journalists murdered. What happened has happened in Gaza places it in a category all of its own, in some cases going back to World War II, to which comparisons were made. The bombing of Hamburg, Dresden, the London Blitz. Gaza was in a category all its own. So they set out on a war of extermination, and in sheer brute numbers, it was, if we can use the expression, an impressive achievement. The other goal was, if you can't kill them, you either expel them, a giant ethnic cleansing, or you make Gaza, as was said over and over again, including by Giora Island, the person I mentioned to you a moment ago, Mr. Island said, the people of Gaza should be told that they have two choices, to stay and to starve, or to leave. And as virtually every human rights organization found, Israel was using, and I'm quoting the findings of virtually everybody, every major human rights organization and humanitarian organization, Israel was using starvation as a weapon of war. And more than 40 million tons of rubble have now been left behind. The entire infrastructure has been decimated to the point of at least 60% of the homes are now unlivable or completely destroyed. And the estimates are it'll take up to 15 years to remove the rubble from Gaza. And even if you could remove the rubble, it's doubtful that it will make a difference, because for those of you whose memories go back, after Operation Cast Lead, Israel refused to let cement into Gaza. And the grounds were that Hamas was using the cement to build tunnels. For those of you who remember, some of you may have even been aboard the flotilla, the humanitarian flotilla that went to Gaza in May 2010. The Mavi Marmara, the flagship of the flotilla, it was carrying 20,000 tons of humanitarian relief for the people of Gaza. Half of it was cement, because Gaza couldn't rebuild. And I think it's, one could say with almost total certainty, that even if you could clear out those 42 million tons of rubble, Israel won't allow cement in to rebuild it. So I would say Israel has achieved at least, no, it's achieved really, well, those three goals I set up, the three goals I listed on the bloodlust, the sheer desire to extract revenge